guys, Danny here. I'm a little bit later today. It's actually not a nap time chat today technically because Ivy is at her nana's. So Thursday's on my work day. I've had a bunch of epic clients this morning and here we are. So I wanted to follow on from yesterday's topic, I think it was yesterday, on emotional eating. And also some stuff that came up in two of the client sessions this morning, and that is around emotions and how we learn to be comfortable with having them, allowing them, feeling them, processing them, that kind of stuff. So if you watched yesterday's, you know that emotional eating is so much about suppressing our emotions, and the way that we change that is by feeling our emotions and not kind of pushing them away. And yeah, it came up in client sessions this morning as well. So I thought I'd dig deeper into this idea of, feeling our emotions and allowing them to be there and how we actually do that. So I will touch a little bit on what I spoke about yesterday, just in terms of where this kind of idea that we need to suppress our emotions comes from. So as children, we're often taught, don't be silly, don't cry, we can be soothed with food, comforted with food, lollipop at the doctor's office, ice cream when you scrape your knee, those kind of things. And they're such small incidents that seem harmless at the outset, but what they actually teach us is that food comforts us. And when we're told to stop crying, don't be silly, you're upsetting me when you cry, those kind of things, it really teaches us that it's not okay to show our emotions. And if you think of like a baby, those first few months of life, they are just emotions, and lots of dirty diapers and stuff like that. But they are pure emotion, right? They don't hold back. They don't sit there and go, oh, I'm hungry, but maybe I shouldn't cry. That's just how they express themselves. And we grow up getting the tools that we need to communicate, so we learn how to talk. We don't need to just cry at every kind of moment anymore, but we still have these really big emotions that we're working through as young children. And when we're told as children to not cry, don't be silly, that kind of thing, or even, anger, don't have a tantrum, don't show your anger like that. There's so many ways that we're kind of told to just hold those emotions in. We can get super excited and happy, and our parents might be like, that's too much, calm down. So it's all kinds of emotions. It's not just crying, but all kinds of emotions we're kind of told by the people around us so often that we need to kind of rein them in, right? And we need to hold them in a little bit more, be a good girl or good boy, don't upset anyone else, don't kind of be too loud, just shh, sit down, be quiet, everything's fine, don't be silly. So all of that programming teaches us as adults that we shouldn't express our emotions. We tend to have these labels for emotions, like this is a good emotion and this is a bad emotion, and we tend to analyze, if I'm feeling this emotion, does that mean that I'm a bad person, or is that too much of a bad emotion, too much of a good emotion? All of these things can become really overwhelming when it comes to our emotions. And so bundled together, we just become these adults that just suppress our emotions, ignore them, push them away. And I'll use the analogy of the riptide again. If the emotions are a riptide, when you fight against them and, try and beat them and that kind of thing, when you swim against them, they just get stronger and more persistent. And when you are in that emotional state, the best thing that you can do, the only thing that you can do really to get through, is just allow them to be there. Float, allow them, that riptide, to take you, and it will pass and you'll come out the other side. When we fight them, they don't go anywhere. When we suppress our emotions, it's not like they've disappeared. We're just storing them in our body and they come out in other ways. I used the analogy this morning with a client. If you're ignoring your emotions, imagine that your emotion is like a demanding toddler. And if you ignore that toddler when they're trying to get your attention, they just get louder and noisier and more in your face, and they'll do whatever they can to try and get your attention. So when we're ignoring and suppressing emotions and pretending they're not there, they actually are getting louder, and they're taking up a lot of physical toll on our body. And they're also taking up a lot of mental space. So things like anxiety can really be caused by, in part, this tendency to just suppress our emotions and hold everything in, and it gets too much. And we tend to just live in this anxious state because we're holding on to everything that we haven't processed. So emotional awareness and acceptance is really about first practicing being aware of what emotion you're feeling, because we get so out of touch with our emotions that we often don't even know what emotion we're feeling. And we kind of revert back to really simple terms when, as adults, we have more complex language to explain our emotions. So the first thing is really, next time you're feeling emotional, take the time to just ask, what emotion is it? What's going on? See if you can give it a name, or even just like, where is it in your body? Is it tightness in your throat? Is it, heaviness in your chest? Is it a pit in your stomach? If you can't find a name for it, then just kind of see if it's sitting somewhere physically in your body and work with that. And this kind of practice of awareness is really, you want to approach it like a curious scientist. So it's not judgment, it's not shame. Particularly if you've been shamed as a kid for having those big emotions, it can be really hard to start from this non-judgmental place. So thinking of yourself like a scientist, and it's just about either asking yourself, what is this emotion? What's going on for me at a conscious level, or checking in with your body. And as a scientist, just being like, oh, okay, it's sitting here. Oh, it feels like this. It feels like this. If there's a part of your body that's feeling specifically some specific way when you're feeling emotional, ask if that part of the body, what does it want to say to you? So you might be feeling really heavy in your chest, and it's like, okay, just with curiosity, no judgment, no blame, no shame, I'm feeling heavy in the chest. Okay, if that heaviness could talk to me, what would it say? Okay, it's feeling like I'm feeling overwhelmed. Okay, where is that overwhelm coming from? So it's just this kind of process of talking yourself through the emotion and allowing it to be there. And when you go through that emotion, you feel overwhelmed, it's not a matter of how can I get rid of this? It's a matter of validating your feelings, allowing yourself to feel overwhelmed, or whatever the feeling is, and just allowing that, just letting it be there. That's as simple as it is, and it sounds really scary when you've done the opposite for your whole life, but it's really about allowing it and not being scared of it, and learning to feel comfortable with your emotions. The other side of this that I wanted to talk about is when you have children, or even just children that you're around. Children have big emotions, right? We know that, especially if you're a parent. Ivy is just starting to get to the age where she's having tantrums, and it's like, oh, okay. But they have these big emotions, and if you are super uncomfortable with your own emotions, dealing with their emotions is going to feel even harder. So if you feel like sometimes doing this work for yourself is selfish, it's actually not. It's the best thing that you can do for your kids, because when you work on that part of yourself, when you heal and grow in that part of yourself, then you're so much better able to support them through their emotions. So that's a really big part of why I'm so big on kind of healing my wounds and working on my own stuff, so that I can not pass that stuff on to my kids, and kind of break the habit, the pattern in that sense. Not to say that I will do everything perfectly, because no one does, but it's so much about seeing your own patterns and deciding very consciously, do I want to pass that on to my kids or not? And if you don't, then doing the work on that. And emotional awareness and acceptance is a really big part of that. So when you have kids and you are struggling to deal with your own emotions, you might find it really hard to deal with their emotions and kind of talk them through that. The other side of that is you might actually be really good at it, because you're giving your kids what you wish you had as a child, and kind of making sure that they have a different experience to what you had as a child. So validating their emotions, allowing them to feel and process, and just being really patient and understanding with them through that, can also be something that comes from someone who doesn't know how to deal with their own emotions because they don't want to do the same thing their parents did to them. If that is the case, it's actually a really good stepping stone to changing the way you deal with your own emotions. And most of us are okay with other people's emotions in some sense, right? Whether it's your kids, your best friend, your mother, your loved ones, most of us can kind of cope with emotions to some degree in other people. And so when you're learning to process and heal and feel and allow your own emotions, you can apply those same techniques, those same words and language that you would use for someone else to yourself. So say your toddler's having a tantrum and you're able to get down to their level and say, hey, I know that's really hard for you. I get it. I hear that you're feeling upset, and I'm just going to sit with you until you feel okay with this, and then we can move on to something else. If you're able to do that for them, then start to apply that for you. So next time you're feeling upset, rather than using the language that you might have heard as a kid, like, don't be stupid, stop crying, it's not that bad, you can start to use that language that you would use for someone else with yourself. And so it's a matter of like, it's okay, I see you, I feel you, I know you're feeling upset. That's totally fine to feel upset in these circumstances, and I'm just going to sit here for a little bit until we're at a place where we can move forward. So it really helps to kind of heal your own stuff, but also if you have other people that you're able to give that support to, then you have those tools that you can then apply back to yourself. Emotional awareness is really one of the biggest game changers for myself and so many of my clients, because holding on to all your emotions, like if you imagine all the emotions that you've ever felt and not dealt with are just sitting in your body, like, the tension that I feel just thinking about that, it's exhausting. It takes up so much mental space. It causes so much unnecessary stress and anxiety because we're just holding on to all this stuff, that if we just allowed it to be there and then allowed ourselves to move through it, it wouldn't have been that big a deal in the first place. So yes, it can feel scary when you first start doing this because you've been taught not to feel your emotions. But when you have a few instances and a few kind of examples and affirmations of when you use these techniques, you allow your feelings to be there. You don't judge them, you don't push them away or anything like that, and just sit with them. And then the emotions pass. Those experiences and those kind of situations will just keep that momentum going. It's like, oh, okay, that did work. That wasn't as scary as I thought. And then next time it comes along, let's try that again. Oh, okay, it worked again. It wasn't as scary as I thought. So just give yourself the time to practice that. It's just a practice. And it's just like if your child or anyone was learning something new, you would be kind and patient to them. So be kind and patient to yourself while you're learning how to feel your emotions, how to allow them to be there, and don't expect, an overnight shift into just being completely okay with emotions. Just allow yourself that time to practice and get used to it, and slip up and go back to old habits and then try again next time, because that's just part of the process as human beings. So if you're just joining now, the replay will be available soon. As always, drop a comment, give me a like, tag anyone that you know needs to hear this. And if you have a more sensitive matter that you'd like to chat to me about, just send me a message. I'm always here, and I can point you in the right direction. So let's do a card reading on this new deck again. If you have any questions now, just pop them in the comments below, and we'll just see what's coming up as a group today. So the card is realignment. Beautiful image. And it just says feel the ebb and flow of life. And this is really just reminding you that emotions are part of life. We're all going to have struggles. We're all going to have things that, sorry, my ring light's like reflecting in that. We're all going to have things that feel hard and are hard. And it's really about just going with the ebb and flow of that, and the less tightly we can hold on to, like the more we can let go of control, the easier it feels just going with it. I remember when my husband's big on boats and the ocean, and I'm not really, but we went out, and I'm still getting used to it. And we went out this day, and it was a little bit rocky, like wavy coming back in. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Yeah, it was a little bit choppy coming back in, and so I was sitting in the passenger seat, and I'm just like holding on for dear life, and my body was so tense, and I just felt every crash back down, and I was like, oh my God, this is the worst thing in the world. Like, why does anyone go out in boats? Just hating it. And I look over at my husband, and he's literally just like so loose and limp, and he's just going with the waves. Like, I've got my hands up because you're driving. And he's just going with the waves, and they weren't phasing him at all. And I was like, oh my God, that is such an analogy for life. Like, this idea that I can hold on to control is so fake, and the more we do that, the more anguish and suffering we cause ourselves. But if we can just go with the flow, if we can just feel the waves and be like, yeah, another wave's going to come and I'll be okay, and just go with it and trust, then it's so much easier. So that is what this card is reminding you, and it's interesting that it's kind of an ocean vibe as well to remind me of that story. But yeah, just that we are emotional beings. Emotions are a part of it. Emotions are not good or bad. Things are going to be great, and they're going to be hard, and everything in between, and that's just life. So the more we can kind of go with that and trust that, and be that kind of loose, limp husband of mine, going with the waves instead of just bracing against them and tensing everything, the easier we will find this whole journey. So yeah, have a great day. I will be back tomorrow for another nap time chat. And yeah, reach out to me in the meantime if you have any questions, comments, anything. I'm loving hearing from you all. Bye.